In an arena among the stars, where warriors were honored through blood and victory, she Elaya, the proud warrior princess, laughed at the Earthman who brought nothing but himself. But within 30 seconds, he would bring her to her knees, not with a blade, not with violence, but with a weapon never respected in this place: understanding, intellect, and compassion. The arena of Aurelian Prime was a crown jewel of the war-born galaxy. A massive coliseum of pale obsidian and shimmering energy, built into the cliffside of a dead moon. Its sky dome projected 3 suns and a night that never fully settled. Tens of thousands of voices chanted her name, Elaya, the Crimson Flame. She stepped into the center, the hydraulic gates hissing as the blood-red glow of her armor lit up the shadows. The Virelian sigil pulsed on her chest plate. Her black hair, pulled into a sharp braid, barely moved as she strode with precision. Her eyes were cold, sharp like glass forged in a neutron storm. Across from her, the gate opened again. The chanting stopped. What emerged was not a warrior, at least not by the arena's standards. Kael, a man of Earth, walked barefoot. His uniform was tattered and soaked in dried sweat. He bore no shield, no sword, no visible implants or cybernetic enhancements. Just him. Just silence. Elaya tilted her head. One brow arched. Then came the smirk. "This is a mistake," she said flatly, voice echoing in the silence. "You send me prey instead of a challenge." Kael said nothing. He looked around slowly at the arena walls, the faces in the shadows, the glow of alien floodlights, and then his eyes settled on her. Steady. Deep. Entirely devoid of fear. The crowd murmured. Confusion. Disbelief. Anger. Their champion was being insulted. Elaya raised her blade, not a mere weapon but a piece of art, forged from Virelian starlight alloy. It shimmered white and gold under the false moons. She walked forward, slow and deliberate. "You mock us by entering our sacred ground like this," she said. "Bare. Weak. Human." Still, Kael did not flinch. "Say something," she demanded. Silence. The announcer's voice boomed through the arena, distorted by layers of machine and tradition. "Combatants ready. Fight begins in 5, 4. Elaya exhaled. Focused. A predator. 3, 2. Kael slowly closed his eyes. 1. The sound that followed was not the clash of weapons. It was the soft hum of shifting air as Elaya lunged forward, blade angled for the heart. Her movements were perfection, years of discipline, wars fought, and battles won, all culminating in this strike. But Kael sidestepped. Effortlessly. His hand brushed past hers, gentle, almost reverent, and touched the air near her neck. She froze. Not because of force. Not because of power. Because something inside her armor flickered. The crowd gasped. Her blade fell inches short of Kael's neck, hovering in space. Her limbs locked. Systems stalled. The pulse within her chest plate went dead. She stumbled back. Knees hit the ground. The silence that followed was louder than any roar. Elaya blinked. Once. Twice. Her breathing ragged. her vision blurred. Kael knelt down, not triumphant, not gloating. His voice was low, barely above a whisper. "Your people once knew peace," he said. "You were not always weapons." She looked up at him, eyes wide, shaking. No one spoke. And in that instant, the crowd, no, the galaxy realized, she had been defeated not by muscle or machine, but by something far more dangerous in a world ruled by steel. An idea. She had mocked him. But now, Elaya, flame of the Virelians, knelt in silence before a man who carried no weapon at all. The air trembled. Elaya moved like a flash of red lightning, her blade arcing with precision and fury. Every motion was honed by decades of training, by victories soaked in glory and blood. Her boots barely touched the stone floor of the arena. She came at Kael not with hesitation, but with the grace of death itself. And yet he did not move. Kael stood in place, arms relaxed, eyes half-lidded. He exhaled, not with fear, but something almost like peace. The crowd held their breath as her sword came within striking range. She twisted, swept low, pivoted, a maneuver known to sever both legs in a single breath. But Kael didn't counter. He simply turned his body ever so slightly. Then, he spoke. A sound escaped his lips, soft, ancient, rhythmic. A sequence of syllables lost to modern Virelian speech, a language buried in forbidden archives and erased from military databanks. It was the language of the first Virelians, the priest builders of the crystalline cities, long before the empire turned to conquest. The moment the words hit the air, the arena trembled again. Not from sound. From resonance. Elaya's chest plate flickered. She halted mid-step. Her sword froze in place. The glow of her armor dimmed. One by one, her limbs lost their connection. Her gauntlet twitched. Her boots lost equilibrium. She stumbled. Her knees hit the ground. The sharp clang echoed through the arena like a funeral bell. The crowd erupted into chaos, cries of disbelief, outrage, confusion. Some thought it a trick. Others screamed sabotage. The commentators' voices scrambled for explanations. But the truth sat in silence, etched in Elaya's wide, disbelieving eyes. Kael walked forward. Calm. Still unarmed. His footsteps rang light against the stone floor. He knelt in front of her, though he did not touch her. "You are not broken," he said gently. "Only locked." She tried to lift her arm. It didn't respond. "What did you do?" Her voice was ragged, half a whisper, half a growl. "I reminded your armor of its first command," Kael replied. "Protection. Not domination." She blinked rapidly, trying to make sense of it. "The protocols, those were deleted centuries ago. No one remembers." "I do." He looked at her with something she didn't understand at first. It wasn't triumph. It wasn't pity. It was mourning. "You were once builders," he continued, his voice soft as the wind between ruined temples. "Not conquerors. This armor wasn't made for killing. It was made to shield. But they rewrote your purpose. Erased your past." His eyes held hers. I came here not to win. I came to remind you. Elaya clenched her jaw. The ache of her locked body was nothing compared to the storm inside her chest. Everything she had ever known, every story of Aurelian glory, every tale of Earth's barbars now felt like shadows cast on stone. Her mind reeled. And yet, in this moment of helplessness, she did not feel hatred. She felt something else. Something terrifying. Clarity. The crowd watched, unsure if they were witnessing victory or heresy. Kael slowly stood and took a step back, his voice barely audible. You weren't meant to kneel for me, he said. Only for the truth. Then he turned and walked away. Elaya remained on the ground. Her fingers twitched. Power returned to her joints in flickers, hesitant and incomplete. Her eyes never left Kael's retreating form. And though her armor would recover, and her pride would be stitched back by ceremony and propaganda, something had already cracked inside her. Not by sword. Not by strength. But by a man who chose to speak the forgotten name of her people, and made her remember what they had lost. The chamber was dim. A soft, amber light spilled from a single ceiling strip, casting long shadows along the cold walls of the royal barracks. Elaya sat on the edge of her cot, still in partial armor. Her gauntlets lay discarded on the floor. Her fingers trembled, not from exhaustion but from thought. It had been 3 nights since the duel. 3 nights since her knees touched stone before a man with no blade. Sleep had become a stranger. She would close her eyes and see it again, Kael standing still, his lips shaping words older than her bloodline, her body locking as if some long-buried truth had seized her from within. What haunted her was not the defeat. It was the question. How did he know the sacred tongue? How did an earth-born one they were taught to call primitive know the foundation language of Aurelian ancestors? And why hadn't he killed her? Each night, the silence in her quarters deepened. Officers passed by her door without a word. Her people didn't know how to treat a champion who fell to a whisper. On the 4th night, just before the artificial moon reached its peak, she left her room. Not in armor. Not in ceremony. Just herself. The prison wing was empty save for one dim-lit corridor. No guards. No surveillance drones. She had made sure of that. Kael's cell was at the end. He sat cross-legged on the floor, eyes closed, breathing slow. A red scar stretched along his temple, a gift from another battle, long before this one. The moment she approached, his eyes opened, calmly, without surprise. For a moment, neither spoke. The silence hung like a veil between them, weighted with unspoken things. Finally, she broke it. Why didn't you kill me? Her voice was steady, but quiet. Almost uncertain. Kael tilted his head, studying her face. I wasn't fighting you, he said. I was fighting what's been done to you. Her brows knit. What does that mean? You think you are the sword, he said. But you are the hand. Someone else forged the weapon. Elaya's throat tightened. You speak of things you don't understand. My people were not always what they are now, Kael finished. I've read your origin stones. The Virelians were once healers. Architects. You didn't conquer, you cultivated. She stepped closer to the cell bars. That history was erased. But not forgotten, he said. Not by all. His eyes were clear, firm, but they did not challenge her, they invited her. Elaya lowered her gaze. You knew the language. The one you spoke in the arena, that's not public. Not taught. Not even to royalty. Kael nodded. I learned it from a Virelian dissenter. A philosopher who fled the war academies. He believed memory was resistance. She looked at him again, and this time the tremble in her hands had nothing to do with cold. You could have ended me, she said. I could have, Kael replied. But if I did, I would only prove what they say about humans, that we solve everything with violence. He leaned forward slightly. I wanted you to see. Not surrender. Just see. Elaya's breath caught in her chest. The torchlight reflected in her eyes. Not the fierce fire of a warrior, but the shimmer of someone beginning to see shadows on the wall. You speak like someone who's already lost, she said softly. Kael offered a faint smile. Maybe I did. Maybe that's why I have nothing left to protect, except truth. She stood there for a long moment, frozen not by fear but by unraveling. And then, without a word, she turned and left. Outside, the corridors felt longer than they had ever been. Every step echoed a doubt she never used to allow. In her quarters, she lit no lights. She sat in the dark. And for the first time in her life, she did not feel like a warrior of Virelian prime. She felt like a child who had just heard a lullaby in a forgotten language, and didn't know whether to cry, or remember the melody. She did not sleep. But the silence no longer felt empty. It felt like the space between questions. And for the first time she was ready to ask them. The forbidden archives were buried beneath the capital, sealed with biometric locks and codes older than most dynasties. But Elaya had access. Royal blood still held weight, even if her pride was splintered. She walked through halls of silence, past shelves of dust-covered tablets, fragments of crystal etched with forgotten glyphs. The air was stale, untouched by circulation systems. This was a place meant to be hidden, not explored. Her fingers trembled as she traced the ancient sigils. Each line was a betrayal of what she had been taught, each character a wound in her worldview. The more she read, the more the truth bled through the cracks of her upbringing. Her ancestors had not built empires of conquest. They had built sanctuaries. The first Virelians were pacifists, not warriors. The armor she wore had been designed not to destroy, but to shield civilians during cosmic storms. Her sword, now a symbol of dominance, was once ceremonial, meant to honor creation, not carve destruction. That night, she returned to Kael's cell with a single fragment of that truth. She did not speak. He was already awake, as if expecting her. Elaya knelt just outside the barrier field. Between them was silence. Then she raised her hand. Her fingers moved not with the gestures of military command, but slow, deliberate motions drawn from the ancient glyphs she had studied. A word. A greeting. Kael responded in kind. A shared phrase. No sound passed between them, but something ancient stirred like wind returning to a long-sealed chamber. In the days that followed, she returned again and again. Never in uniform. Never with guards. She brought fragments of the language, and he taught her its rhythm. They spoke through the field in gestures, in looks. When a phrase was too complex, she would draw on the floor with bits of broken chalk. He would correct her gently, never laughing, only guiding. With each visit, the silence became more intimate. There were no declarations. No obvious turns toward softness. But Kael began sitting closer to the barrier. And Elaya, though she never touched it, sometimes leaned just far enough for their shadows to merge. She watched him closely, not like an interrogator, but like someone trying to remember a song from childhood. Every small expression, every breath he took when pausing before responding, it all began to matter. Once, after they successfully completed a full sentence in the old language together, she looked up and smiled. Kael didn't return it. But his eyes, they warmed. She never asked for his past. And he never demanded hers. It wasn't needed. The language they shared was not for stories, it was for essence. One night, she whispered through the barrier. Not in common, not in high Virelian, but in the old tongue. You are not what I was told. Kael looked at her. Long steady. And signed back. Neither are you. The air between them trembled, not from power but from recognition. She left that night and stood beneath the artificial stars, head tilted to the dome. She thought about the war. The drills. The blood-soaked ceremonies. And then she thought of a man who did not raise his hand in the arena. Who spoke peace in a world tuned only to violence. Who could have ended her but instead, gave her a word. Not love. Not yet. But freedom. Elaya was no longer certain of her rank, her destiny, or her future. But as she traced one of the ancient symbols into the dust outside his cell the next morning, one that meant listen, she knew this. She had begun to remember who she was before they told her who to be. And for the first time, she hoped he would never say he loved her. She hoped he would simply let her become someone worth loving. That would be enough. They came for Kael before the dawn cycle. Elaya felt the shift in the palace currents, the sudden silence of courtyards, the missing eyes of the sentinels who always lingered too long outside her doors. Her instincts, sharpened by years of battle, caught the tremor behind the calm. She intercepted the orders herself, a covert execution, authorized by the royal ascendancy. No trial. No declaration. Just silence. They would erase him like a mistake. Because he made her kneel. Because he spoke words older than the throne. Because he had made the strongest symbol of Virelian pride hesitate, and that could not be forgiven. She stood in her chamber, holding the order scroll with trembling hands. The name etched there was simple, Kael of Earth. Underneath, a code sigil marked for termination before cycle end. She had a choice. Remain the face of her empire. Or become its betrayal. At midnight, she walked into the core chamber beneath the royal spire. Her armor was gone. In its place was a travel cloak and a pulse key forged from an old philosopher's glyph. She accessed the hidden root of the palace AI layered beneath centuries of protocols and entered the forgotten words. The language of protection. The language of first memory. The system resisted at first, then yielded. Lights blinked. Barriers dropped. Kael stood shackled in the lower wing, guarded by two silent soldiers. They didn't have time to react. Elaya moved like wind. She didn't kill them. Only pressed two glyphs to the back of their helmets and they slumped, asleep. Kael looked up as she stepped through the field. His eyes didn't widen. He didn't ask questions. He only whispered, "You chose." She nodded. "If living as a warrior means killing the innocent," she said, "then I choose to be a deserter." She broke his chains with the same pulse key. Their fingers brushed. No time for words. They ran. Corridors folded behind them as Elaya triggered the ancient pathways. Hidden tunnels, meant for escape in the age before conquest, lit under their feet. Sirens didn't sound, not yet. The system still obeyed the old language. They emerged beneath the launch silos. Her ship, small, unmarked, waited in a shadow hangar, its code forgotten by modern registries. Once inside, she sealed the hatch. Engines roared. For the first time in generations, a warrior of Aurelian blood fled her own world, not in shame, but in choice. Stars streaked around them. The planet fell behind. Kael sat across from her, silent. She looked at him, unarmored. No sword. No title. Just a man who had survived by not fighting. And had changed her by refusing to hate. He smiled. Just a little. It was the first time she had seen him do that. And it was enough. They settled on a planet in the outer fringe, unnamed, untouched. No thrones. No commands. They planted trees. Built a dome of glass and stone. She hung her sword above the door, never to be drawn again. Visitors came. Survivors. Dreamers. The broken and the hopeful. Not all spoke the same tongue. But they taught each other. And when the children of those who fled asked Elaya who she once was, she smiled and answered, "I was once the sword. But now, I protect with something stronger." At dusk, she would walk into the fields. Barefoot. The grass cool beneath her feet, the sky cracked open with stars. And Kael would be there, waiting, no longer alone. She wore no armor now. And she did not need to. Because in his eyes, she was not a warrior. She was free.